Hi, and welcome to Real Nurse Stories. Today on the show, I'm pleased to welcome Athol, who is an emergency nurse working in Australia. Hi, good afternoon, Athol.
Hi Eva, nice to see you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Nice to see you too. It's always nice to see people, even though it's virtually on Zoom at the moment. Great to see you.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
thanks for agreeing to be interviewed today, Athol, about your nursing career story. And I think that's probably where, if it's okay with you, we'll start kind of right at the beginning of your journey. And if I could ask you, what made you decide to become a nurse in the first place?
Yeah, thanks Eva. Yeah, nursing's funny. It's been an interesting path and journey, and I certainly never thought I'd be a nurse. I dreamed of being a football star or a cricket star, and then my body decided to had not allow me to do any of that anymore. So I had to reevaluate what I was going to do with my life. Um, So yeah, I first got into nursing straight out of high school, and I was initially actually going to do exercise science as a degree, and I was quite, basing off my love for sport and love of the human anatomy and biology and all that sort of stuff. So I thought it was quite a good fit, and then I started to have a think about it, and the job prospects of going through that degree wasn't set in stone. And what I really wanted out of university was a degree. I wanted to earn some money because I had some other life goals and ambitions. I wanted to do some travel and whatnot. And I wanted a profession and a job that really set me up for success from the get go.
Mm.
So I had some real question marks over it, and I didn't want to. I would have had to move away from home for 2.5 hours. So yeah, there were some hesitations, and funny enough, I must have been mentioning this to my grandmother, and my grandmother said to me, "Well, why don't you do nursing?" And I was quite taken aback because I was like, "Well, I didn't ever think about that." And she said, "You like people, you like biology, and you like learning about the human body, and
Yeah.
why don't you do that? And the job prospects are really great." And I went, "That's not a bad idea." I think I sat on it for a day, and uh, after that day, I went, "Hey, I'm going to do it." And I do that. I just, if I think something works out, and it's fun. It's been a fantastic decision.
Oh, sometimes it's funny, isn't it? Other people see things about ourselves that we don't always see ourselves at the time. And that's obviously what your grandmother saw, that, she thought that would be something that you would be good at.
Yeah, I guess so. And yeah, no, it's worked out well. So sometimes you got to follow those people that are white, like people who know you really well, and they could see the qualities
Yeah.
that are in you to do that job. And yeah.
Yeah. How old were you when you went into nursing, Athol?
So I started off the degree. Well, when I finished. I was 20,
Yeah.
and turning 21, and then so that's when I started nursing out of university.
Yeah. Okay. So more or less straight from finishing uni, you went into, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I had 6 months off and went to South Africa on a bit of a trip, and then I started off at Royal Perth over in Perth.
Okay. So you started here. I didn't realise that.
I did. When you said you moved to Fiona Stanley, I before leaving Perth, that was when Fiona Stanley was getting going, and I had the choice to make:
Ah,
do I stay and go to Fiona Stanley, or do I come back home? And I decided
yeah.
to come back to Victoria.
Very good. Very good. So you know Perth well.
I do. It's a lovely spot.
Oh. So in the form that you filled in for me, Athol, you gave me a number of topics that you wanted to talk about today. And maybe if we can just go through and have a chat about those. So you had the first one on your list was understanding your why. Can you just talk me through that a little bit more? Why that's important?
Well, it's funny enough. I think the story comes back to my grandmother suggesting that I should do nursing. I think it's so fundamental that we understand who we are, and and what our qualities are, but what we want to achieve out of the job we do. We spend so much time at work, and we spend so much time trying to get ahead at work, that reflecting on what's it really doing for you. I think that's fundamentally important. You certainly need to look after yourself when you're going into such a tough world like nursing and healthcare. And if you don't understand what really drives you to be a nurse, it can be really difficult when you get to those tough questions and those tough moments. You've done 4 runs a night, or you've seen a couple of people die. When things hit you and you don't have a good core understanding what's driving you, it can shake you about. And which is what happened to me when I was in Perth, actually, and I was really struggling at that point in time, why I was going through so many of the struggles I was going through. And I just couldn't really get a good grasp on some of the actions, some of the things that I was doing, and they weren't congruent with what really drove me as a person. And so that's one of my hot topics of talking points at the moment, is because I think it's just really fundamental that not even if you're a nurse or anyone working in health, I think it's really fundamental that we understand why we do it, because then when you can understand the actions that you take in the job, and so that's why it's one of my hot topics, I suppose.
That's really interesting, because a lot of the work that I do around resilience, that's a really strong theme. There's different components that make up your resilience, but knowing your why and having that congruence with where you work, and that strong feeling of why is something that really helps to keep people resilient when times are tough at work, or if you've had a bad shift, or difficult kind of traumatic events. That's kind of one of the things that really boosts your resilience. And I guess for a lot of young nurses just starting out, or not necessarily young, just nurses who are starting out in their careers, it must be quite hard to have that sense of why, because nursing is so broad. There's so many avenues that you can go into in nursing, and I think a lot of the kind of newly qualified nurses I talk to aspire to going into like ICU or ED or high dependency. And then sometimes, they end up somewhere else and really love it. But I think it must be really hard initially to have a very strong sense of why when you've just qualified, and the pressures around, getting a grad placement, you're very much at the whim and the mercy of wherever there's a vacancy. And that must be really tough, I think.
Oh, yeah, totally. And to be fair, you start your career, you've sort of just got to put your head down and knuckle down a little bit. You really just got to get your core training underneath you, and really get rolling in there. I think though, it's probably understanding who you are as a person more than yourself as a nurse specifically. If I look back on my time, and every point, every decision I've made in my life, it's been for a driver, and most of the time it's been to contribute and to grow, and sometimes it's actually to be significant, and it's not just significant to myself, but it's for others. And so I really, and that's a lot of that's through Tony Robbins, and a lot of that's through some development stuff that I've done. And if you understand your core drivers even if you're 18 or 19, you can understand what you want to, what's really driving you to actually do the job, to contribute to others, to help more people. And if you understand that, then you can sort of tailor, or you can at least understand your action.
Yes, yeah, it helps to give you a bit of a roadmap, doesn't it, if you understand your why?
A bit of perspective too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think I watched, because it applies even, outside of healthcare. It applies very much in business, as well, in terms of understanding what drives you to do the work that you do. I think is applicable to, you know, to everybody really, and especially if you watch the Simon Sinek, you know, talk that he did, the TED talk on knowing your why. I just think that's such a great reminder of the importance of that, you know, and being authentic and clear about that.
And he was speaking to that in business terms, but
Yes.
really from a human evolution perspective, that's how we, you know, we resonate quite strongly with stories, because that's how we communicate. But, you know, he talked about, you know, the whys, the center circles, that, you know, it's really that's your core thing. And it's because we're driven by emotions 99% of the time. Our emotions can often dictate what we do and the decisions we make. And, you know, if you're talking to someone's why, you're also talking to their emotional side of them.
Yes.
And, you know, people talk about that heart grab, and they, you know, pulling at the heartstrings. Well, that, you know, that's really just getting to the core of that person. And I think, you know, we could take a lot of that out of that for communication and how we interact with people. We don't have to get involved with everything someone does, but if you can understand the fears or some, you know, the why of your patients or what's going through, and it's all perspective, and it's probably why nurses are so compassionate, that we can understand what others are going through.
Yeah, I was just going to say that to you. You know, if you understand your own why very clearly, you can also help other people to understand their why, and that is a really useful tool in communication. So
Totally right.
So tell me a little bit about one of the other things you've got. Well, you've got a few things on the list, but one of the things you've also listed is about men in nursing, and I'm keen to know more about that from your perspective, because I think previous interviews that I've done, we've touched a little bit on that kind of gendered issue in the nursing profession. So I'm interested to hear your perspective on men in nursing.
Well, fantastic. Men in nursing, it's interesting. It's funny how we label things, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, and the male nurse is one of those labels. You know, a female nurse, it's a label. But for me, how do I say? Well, a bit of my background is I'm from a dairy farm, so I grew up, you know, on the farm, working hard and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I had no real intention of going to nursing. And so I think the men in nursing, you have to really speak to the person, and what I come back to that driver. So I went into nursing for all these fundamental reasons, because I liked anatomy. I liked having a lot of responsibility. I liked caring for people, because, you know, that's part of human nature. But I also liked having a bit of influence on other lives. You know, it's really about contributing more, and men really like those technical aspects. And I think sometimes we don't advertise that enough. You know, why do men go into a trade? Why do men go into mining? Like, what are the things that men are going into these other roles for? And I think we should promote those aspects. You know, there's those fundamentals of different trades that they get out of. And because, and you know, my brother's an electrician or a sparky, and he likes being his own boss, but he likes being able to think through problems and really creatively solve solutions for clients, especially with electrical problems. And I think we don't play on that enough, because in nursing we have to be creative thought leaders. We have to, you know, think on our feet. There's a lot of process involved, but, you know, how do we manage a conflict? How do we manage that blood pressure at 95 systolic? You know, what avenues are we going? One avenue is this way, one avenue is that way. We've got a lot of competing demands, and I think we could play on that more, and you'd see more men in nursing come through. I don't know. Like, I love it, and, you know, having blokes in the nursing workforce is a great balance. And it's not pushing it away from females who you know, we've all got a role to play, and, you know,
Is it tough being a man in the nursing profession?
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I don't particularly think so. I haven't found it tough. Um, I haven't really felt any stigma over it either.
No.
Like I used to cop it every now and then from my mates, but it was more of a laugh rather than a gripe sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of your colleagues sometimes like it.
Yeah.
Some of your friends who are female nurses, it can be a nice balance, especially
Yeah.
when tension can be tough.
I'd agree with that, because I think, if I think back over my career, there are, well, as we know from some of the articles that have been written by Tracy and Emma, nurses, the female nurses in nursing can actually be a little bit unkind to each other at times. And I think, to have a team where you have kind of male and female nurses balances that a bit, and you get a different perspective, and I think that's a real positive. And I know that that's changing a lot in nursing for the better, and that there are more men going into nursing, which is great. And I think, for me, there's still perhaps this public perception around nurses, and there's that disconnect between the actual reality of modern day nursing versus perceptions that perhaps the public have of nurses. And we've seen a lot of that during COVID in some of the terminology that's used, superheroes and, angels and all sorts of descriptive words, which kind of, for me, still says that we're missing something in the public understanding of modern day nursing, of which, there is more men definitely coming into nursing, so it isn't such a predominantly female profession anymore. But I still think that's maybe not portrayed enough in the media and not written about. It's almost that perception of nursing is still that historical, outdated, traditional view.
Yeah, I get it every now and then, but I don't get that often. It is probably still there to a degree, but it
Yeah.
works the other way sometimes. So I have a few friends that are some of my friends who are doctors that are female, actually, the stigma goes that way just as much as any male,
Yeah.
stigma. So they often get called nurse, or um, can you do this for me, nurse, and whatnot. And they have to say to them, oh, look, and sometimes they don't care, and sometimes they do. So it's,
Yeah.
there's definitely perception.
Yeah, that's true. It's not just nurses. It is other professions within healthcare that experience that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You alluded to a little bit earlier, Athol, about burnout in nursing, and that's something that you wanted to talk about today, and just wanted to explore that with you.
Yeah, I guess I've become properly the burnout one once properly. Uh, it happened when I moved back from Perth back home to Victoria, actually, and yeah, it really shook me about. And I suppose I keep harping and drum back on this, but I really had this misalignment with I was doing. I was in a role that probably didn't fit my true values and what I was trying to achieve, and I was just finding a lot of challenges with building up, and I didn't recognise all the stress, and there was a bit of pressure in the work environment, and
Yeah.
I'd been bullied to a degree, and then I just was, and all these things would just keep adding up, and I didn't realise until one day that was the end of me. I had to go and leave, and I went and completed some other work, and so I knew it wasn't nursing particularly, but I was pretty, yeah, I was at rock bottom emotionally and mentally for a bit. You
Yeah.
know, I ticked a few boxes on the depression scale, and by by the time I got down to that point, it was hard to pick up.
Yes.
And I got through that reasonably well. But what it meant is I'd left nursing for 12 months, and I went back and worked on the farm. I got back into nursing, but I still wasn't my passion itself. And
No.
it took probably took 2 or 3 years before I started. 3 years in total before I could really get back into it properly.
So the work that you did on understanding your why, Athol, was that after you'd gone through that experience of burnout that you really, yeah.
Yeah. So how I start harping on the why stuff is because of that burnout experience, because I had to really go back down to my fundamentals and start working out, well, why do I feel so bad? And why can't I do a job that I loved and still love? What's happened? And so I started to piece it apart. What were the factors that led to me, I guess, suffering from burnout, and what led up to it? And so I started to map out a bit of a journey of all the decisions and all the parts of, I guess, of my life, and then worked out, well, these are all the things that I really enjoyed, and these are all the positive components that I'd chosen to do, and these are some of the ones that I wasn't enjoying. And I worked out that I was probably pushing myself into a position where it wasn't congruent with what was driving me, and the work wasn't fulfilling me. It was just really tough. And then so understanding a few of those fundamentals and getting some good sleep and community and all that, all those components certainly helped.
Did you feel at that time that you were, I suppose, before you actually went off with burnout, did you feel that you were under pressure to a certain extent to perform in terms of being a qualified nurse? Was that something that you were aware of, the pressure on yourself to achieve, probably is a better word, rather than perform?
I guess the pressure that was created was probably more internal than external. There's always pressure as a nurse to get the job done and to make sure you are performing to a level of quality care, and you can fulfill all your qualities. But it was more that internal voice. Sometimes if I didn't think I was going well, or I'd get some criticism, I just didn't know how to rationalize all that. And it just sort of, you started to question who you are as a person and as a nurse. So I think it was more that degree. I quite enjoy hard work is not what broke me. It was just more of that internal pressure, and there were some, and I was going through a lot of changes. I was beginning my career as an ICU nurse, and it just didn't all match up. All those pressures, being away from home, work. I'd created pressures outside of work, and then I was under the pump in ICU as well. Like I was under pressure as well. And it's a high intense, it's an intense environment. So it's sort of all just come to a head, I suppose.
What do you think, if you kind of looking back now, what would have helped you deal with that earlier, do you think? If you were to go back now, knowing what you know, having learnt about yourself, what would have been helpful?
Yeah, look, I think knowing about this sort of stuff when I was going through uni, or being prepared, having a bit of a roadmap to look at. So it's hard, and you probably find this in your own coaching, is that having a mentor or someone to bounce ideas off. I think that would have been really great. There's nursing midwifery support as well now, which wasn't available then. So there's that hotline, and that probably would have been fantastic. But I think sometimes you just get so lost in your head that you lose sight of true north, or you just, you know, you're just swimming and swimming and swimming. You don't actually, you know, you get lost in the process or the steps involved, and then you forget about the reason you're doing it. And then, and so if you don't have someone to talk to, or to even to guide what you're doing off, then you can just get, you can get really lost.
Yeah, and that's so true, because I think, you know, some areas are better than others in terms of mentorship and support for staff, and there are some great initiatives, but it's still too often the case that nurses suffer burnout, and generally speaking, you know, it's not until they get too far down that line where they're actually off work that they begin to get support at that point. Whereas really what I think should happen is that, you know, the support is much earlier on, and so that you do have someone to talk to and bounce that, you know, kind of where you start to doubt and question yourself, that you have someone that you can have that conversation who can give you that reassurance, because nursing is tough. It is a tough job, but we're still losing too many people to burnout. And I also think there's a sense of kind of shame almost in admitting that you're suffering burnout. And some of the work here that I've done, you know, with senior nurses, nurse unit managers or midwifery managers, is that whole not feeling confident about things, you know, second guessing their abilities, not having anyone to check that with, and they carry that because they don't want to always admit to someone they work with, because then they feel that someone's going to judge them because they're not doing their job properly. So it's a very convoluted, difficult issue, I think, for nurses to A, admit, and B, I don't always think we've got the right support in place at the right time. I think we're getting better at it, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, you're totally right, Eva. And something I probably haven't shared with you, actually, I've recently launched an app, and the app was born off this experience, because we don't look after ourselves very well.
No.
We look after others quite well, and the app that I've just launched is based on shift work, and it's based on helping people connect and communicate with each other. So yeah, I totally think it's worth investigating and exploring, and, you know, continuing the conversation so we can normalise it, or just get it out in the open, and hear others talk about it.
So tell me a little bit about how your app works, Athol, because I think, you know, there's so many opportunities now for innovation, I think, in health, and I'm really curious to know more about how that works and the feedback that you've had.
Yeah, fantastic. So the app name's called FWards, and the app is born off shift work, really. You know, when I was going through burnout, shift work was one of those big stresses that, you know, is a fundamental that we have to do. You know, it's part of the job, but we're not taught how to manage it at university. No. We're not taught how to go, you know, these are some great fundamentals that we should be looking after, and you try and control some of the different dynamics in shift work.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's come from. So what it is that you enter your roster, and from your roster, if we know who you are, we know what you do and where you work, then we're able to not only give you a pay estimate, so we're able to help you forecast what your pay is going to be for that fortnight.
Yeah.
We're able to connect you with your team, and also deliver some wellbeing content and different resources to you in the app. And that's probably some of my favorite. That's one of my favorites, especially that chat screen. And one of the other favorites that people have mentioned is there is a mindfulness feature, and what that does is it links to the shifts that you work and helps you to debrief and offload from the day. And it just helps you to ground yourself after a shift. You know, you can say what went well and what, you know, if there's anything you want to get off your chest, so you can just offload and leave it there on the app.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I did when I was first starting nursing, which probably got me through a lot of days, was I started to do a fair bit of journaling and just leaving some thoughts on the paper. And so that's where we're at with the app, and we're continuing to grow and upload public health nurses and get more people on board. And once we get, the more of the community we get on board, the more communication we'll be able to send and deliver some more resources. And it's good fun.
That's great. Do people have to pay to use the app, or is it free, or?
It's currently free. I'm urging as many nurses to get on board, so we can give you the free version for as long as we possibly can. At some point, we're going to have to probably charge for it. Things don't come free in this world, but I'd certainly, if you share it around, and I certainly want to keep it as free as long as possible.
Because one of the things as you were talking there, and I know this came up in a recent podcast interview that I did, where we were talking about the benefits of reflection, and how a lot of nurses know that reflection is a useful tool, but it's, for some, the actual sitting and writing is not something that some people really find easy to do. And we were talking about, being curious as to whether there is an app, and it sounds like that's potentially something that you're kind of thinking about. Would that be correct?
Yeah. So there's definitely some avenues there, and seeing if we're looking into some voice recording, and able to spit out some words, and you can swear at the app, and it'll write it. It'll write it for you. We're not there yet, but we certainly want to help nurses or health professionals just to offload and clear their mind, and doing that takes a few different routes and avenues.
I think that's great, Athol, because a lot of the work I do with coaching nurses is around, I hear that so many times, I don't have time for me, or, my self-care comes way down the list. And I think sometimes it's actually giving people really small, practical ways that they can help themselves, and anything that uses technology in the way that your app does is just something that I think is a real positive way forward, because the quick things, especially if you can record it, store it on your phone, it's just time saving, but it has such an important role in helping someone with their self-care. So I'm interested to know what feedback you've had from nurses.
Because there's a few different features. Nurses, some nurses like different features, but they've really enjoyed it. I've had a lot of positive feedback. Once we had a few teething problems initially, and that's just with any technology. But probably the favourite stuff is the mindfulness feature, but a lot of nurses really like the pay estimate feature as well. Because what that does is that it gives you a bit of an understanding what your pay is going to be, and because so then you're able to pick up those extra shifts or not. You're able to have those mental health days. You've got enough money, and the other thing too is that you can correlate the pay estimate against your pay. And so over Christmas, I found over $1,000 I was missing just from the sheer changes in the change in penalties and all that sort of stuff. So I haven't been able to pinpoint what a favourite part of the app is just yet, but those are probably the two big ones.
And you're kind of making it easy for people, aren't you? Because I know that pay is an issue. It can be a real stressor, and if your app helps people to have kind of more of a control over knowing what's coming in, that's lessening one of those stressful things, isn't it? Which is a good thing. Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head. And the purpose of the app is to try and reduce some of those stresses that are present in our day to day.
Yeah.
Because if you're not having all those stresses build up all the time, then you should, well, not should, hopefully you'll be able to handle those extra stresses that come your way. You know, because I like the cup analogy. You know, you've got so much water you can handle in a cup. If you pour too much in, it spills over. You know, so keeping that cup's water down to a reasonable level. That's how I look at the app.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to look at it. And is it something that's bigger than Australia? Are people outside of Australia using your app?
Not yet, but
No.
yeah, funny enough, it is bigger than Australia. There's a heap of pressure in nursing around the world, and we're actually quite fortunate here at the moment. And I've got a little bit of interest from the US and the UK because, as you would know, the pressure over there is immense. You know, it's hard going.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's certainly, well, as you say, in both countries, actually, I think for maybe slightly different reasons, but the stresses are still enormous. And I think that's, you know, something globally in nursing that's, you know, anything that you can do that kind of gives people that ability to buy back a bit of time for self-care, I think is a hugely positive thing. We really do. I think it's a great thing to have. And I think because you've had personal experience, I mean that's come out of your personal journey, hasn't it? And understanding your why, and in a way it's been a positive experience because you've developed something that can help others. I think that's a great testament to the work that you've done on yourself, actually. I think, you know.
Oh, thanks, Eva. No, I really appreciate that. And you know what drives me now is preventing others going through the same problem, the same rot that I have to deal with. You know, I don't really. You never envisage your colleagues having to go through 3 years of pain and turmoil. You know, and if we could prevent a few of those happening, I'd be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, given what we know about the numbers in nursing, you know, we can't afford to lose people. That's the way I look at it. You know, there's a lot invested in people to become a nurse in terms of the cost of training, but also the personal investment. And I think to lose people from the profession who are great nurses is, to me, something that we shouldn't have happening in nursing. We should have processes and systems in place that can support people, you know, because we need nurses. It's as simple as that. We can't afford to lose people.
No, you're totally right, and there's some pretty scary figures about nursing turnover out there, and you know, some figures. Our median for Australia is 15% every year. You know, and that even if you are replacing that 15%, that means they're still trained. You still got to train them. You know, we've really got this big problem that middle ground of nursing. You know, we're losing. You know, they may get through their grade year, but then that big chunk is what happened to me as well. You get through your grade year, and then you start to feel insecure, and you do something else.
And that's where I, you know, see the need for coaching, if you like, because I think coaching is not something nurses have had access to unless you're working at a really senior executive level in nursing. And as you say, it's that middle section of nursing, as I call, that, you know, struggle with almost sometimes, I want to say, the imposter syndrome. You know, they're fantastic clinical nurses who get promoted and then find themselves completely out of the depth because they've got into a position that needs, you know, management leadership as well as clinical skills. And that, to me, is where there's this huge gap around supporting that group of nurses, you know, that who are on that journey. It's like we put them in a position and suddenly expect them to run without giving them the tools and the support that they need to do the job. So I completely agree with what you said. And I'm also curious about kind of unis and student nursing. Has there been interest there, Athol, in the work that you're doing?
I probably haven't got to those conversations just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been focusing on trying to get it in the hands of as many nurses as possible. We probably haven't had those sort of conversations just yet. But we're very hopeful to have them, because we think, you know, starting that as early as possible is definitely the best approach.
Because I was just picking up on something you said earlier about, you know, not being taught some of these things when you were training, and I think, again, I've heard that so many times from different people, and I think to start early and, you know, help people to know that there are tools that can help them is going to also be really helpful.
Yeah, totally. And something you may be aware of, and you probably know about, is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you seen that?
Sorry, have I seen the
Dunning-Kruger effect?
No, I don't think so. Oh, tell me about that.
I'll have to send it to you. But so the Dunning-Kruger effect is this study that Dunning and Kruger come up with, this model of learning, and the model is that on one axis there's competence, and on the other axis is confidence.
Yes.
And so when we come out of university, and I can attest to this. This is certainly my trajectory. Come out of university, all full of energy, thinking you're going to save the world, or, you know, you've got all this learned knowledge, and you're confident. Your confidence is really high, but your confidence maybe isn't, you know, as at the high level. And then all of a sudden you start to learn how much there is to know, and you get down to this rock bottom where your confidence is actually improving quite a bit.
Yeah.
And if you get to this rock bottom period, you start to realize how much you do know, and you come out on the other side really experienced. And that's certainly, I found it and went, oh my God, that was my trajectory.
See, but these are the things that we should be teaching. You know, to me, what you've just talked about makes perfect sense. And again, I can just think I do some work coaching students as well, and there is such, an example would be, particularly at the moment, applying for grad places, and they're, filling in these application forms and struggling to demonstrate that they know, they've learnt all these things. And my heart goes out to them sometimes, because, I have to keep saying, this is about, they're looking for somebody who is a safe nurse, who understands, when to escalate. They're not expecting you to be this encyclopedia of all things nursing, but it's so hard for them because, they try desperately to demonstrate this. And it's, I just think we're not doing enough with students around the whole, understanding how it works. It's almost like it's not modernized, it's not come forward, it's still back here to a certain extent, and that's not helping people.
Totally right. And we're not setting people up for success.
No.
This happens religiously. Nearly every time a grad comes in, it's happening. And we should be warning them. We're not even warning them, but just sitting them going, these are the feelings you could be having when you start. The feelings of you're not doing well enough, the feelings of imposter, you're feeling you're not, yes, you've got all this knowledge and information you've come out of university with, but you're going to feel like you're not doing the best you can be. And that's okay. Because you're going to learn and you're going to progress.
Yeah. And I think I think you find that imposter syndrome in other senior roles as well, where people are new to a role and do feel like, oh, I shouldn't be here, I don't know enough. And it's, that journey of kind of your growth and development as a leader. You don't come into a role knowing all that. It's part of your progression, but it's almost like nobody says that to you,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
So we've covered quite a lot of things. I'm just thinking about, I know you've talked about your app and your journey, but what's the one thing that you do for yourself now, knowing what you know and having been through your burnout journey? How do you keep yourself resilient, and how do you look after you?
It's an interesting one. I try to keep my feet on level ground as much as possible. And there's a couple of fundamentals that I really focus on now. And every day I try to do something that makes me smile or fills me full of joy. And a lot of the time that involves paddleboarding on the water, or going on the water and doing that sort of stuff. Or sometimes it might be as easy as being grateful. Saying thank you, or buying a cup of coffee and talking to the just being really thankful and try and get back to your core self. So I guess it's hard going. Like, we've got so much pressures on in this day and age with what we're doing, but I try to not be so hard on myself, and then always be looking at taking some of those reflective moments.
Yeah. And what has been, do you think, a particularly challenging time for you? I know we've talked about burnout, but in your career so far, what would you say has been the biggest challenge for you?
Biggest challenge. I suppose that is my biggest challenge. That transition. There's a few clinical challenges that really made it pretty tough for me. But I think I probably don't have any other really great examples on that. There's some clinical stuff that really challenged me. But I was able to get through them and rationalize them. I think rationalizing any of the difficulties we find in nursing, if you're able to put some thought around it and not let it eat at you and offload it with someone, I think that's what I've done in the past.
Good advice. What would you most like to be remembered for in your career, Athol?
I guess it would be pushing the boundaries and asking difficult questions. And someone who prided themselves on both patient and colleague advocacy. I think we could look after each other much better. So
Well,
I think that.
It's a great way to want to be remembered, I think. And it's funny, isn't it, when you've had a personal experience that's not been particularly pleasant, but you've kind of done the work and come out of the other side with a different perspective, and it almost gives you, in a sense, a stronger why, doesn't it? I think.
Well, they do say that your challenges are meant to make you stronger. There's some challenges you can avoid, but I think that's a lot of my career is if we took just a little bit more time to reflect on some of those difficult moments, I think we'd benefit from them even more, and we'd probably have a different perspective.
Well, I think it's great work that you're doing, Athol, and I think particularly, the app is something that's much needed, and I know there's potential there to go on and do more with that. If people are interested, how do they find your app?
So they can head to the website. So the website's www.FWards, FWards.com. Or they can search for it on Facebook, and we've got an active Facebook page, and they can join us in the Forward Thinking Nurse Facebook group. And so they could find out a little bit more there, and it'd be great. It'd be great to see even yourself, Eva, and the others there.
No, I will. I'll definitely look you up, because I actually have a Facebook group here that I always share actually anything that I come across that I think is going to help them. So I'll definitely find your Facebook page and share that with them, and share your FWards app as well, because I think anything that helps people is, important to share.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic.
It's been lovely to interview Athol today, and it's, that's what I love about doing this, is hearing people's stories and journeys, and how, they've contributed, given something back as a result of that learning. And I think that comes across really strongly through your story. And just thank you for sharing that, because I think for other nurses listening, there's always something that you can take away that can help you from these stories. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
My absolute pleasure, and it's fantastic to speak to you today.
Thank you.